Part 5. The Salted Retina. By the end of the 1970s, the dust was settling on the soul surfing era. But as the sun set on the decade, a new kind of light was rising, the glow of the cinema screen. The ocean is a fleeting thing. A wave exists for 10 seconds and then vanishes forever. To capture it, to hold it still, you need the salted retina, the eye of the filmmaker. In this final chapter, we explore how the movies didn't just document surf culture. They created the myth that the rest of the world would chase for the next 50 years. The Gospel of the Search, the Endless Summer. We cannot speak of surf cinema without bowing to the altar of Bruce Brown. Although The Endless Summer was released in the mid-60s, it was in the 1970s that it became the Bible for every traveling nomad. It wasn't just a movie, it was a blueprint for a life. 2 surfers, a handful of boards, and a map of the world. Brown's narration, dry, witty, and quintessentially American, turned the surfer from a beach bum into a global explorer. When audiences saw Mike Hinson and Robert August walking across the dunes of South Africa to discover Cape St. Francis, something shifted in the collective consciousness. It introduced the idea of the perfect wave, a platonic ideal that existed somewhere out there, waiting for those brave enough to leave home. In the 70s, this film played in constant rotation in high school gyms and local theaters, fueling the great migration of surfers to Bali, France, and beyond. The poet of the tube, Morning of the Earth. While Hollywood looked for plot, the surf underground looked for spirit. In 1972, Albie Falzon released Morning of the Earth, and the world of surf cinema was never the same. This wasn't a movie with a script, it was a visual poem. Shot mostly in Australia and Indonesia, it captured the shortboard revolution and the birth of soul surfing in vibrant, saturated colors. It showed surfers living in treehouses, shaping their own boards by hand, and surfing waves like Uluwatu before there were any hotels or roads. The soundtrack, pure 70s folk rock, became the anthem of the era. Morning of the Earth convinced a generation that surfing was a spiritual calling. It portrayed the surfer as a monk of the sea, someone who had opted out of the rat race to live in harmony with the swell. It remains the most beautiful record of the 70s vibe ever captured on celluloid. The Hollywood tragedy, Big Wednesday. Then, the 70s gave us its most bittersweet goodbye, Big Wednesday, 1978. Directed by John Milius, a man who loved the ocean as much as he loved the craft of storytelling, this film was a love letter to a disappearing world. It followed 3 friends from the innocent, Great South Bay days of the 60s through the trauma of the Vietnam War and into the disillusioned late 70s. It was the first film to treat surfing with the weight of a Greek tragedy. It showed the aging surfer, the man who realizes that the golden age is behind him. The final scene, The Great Swell, is a masterpiece of practical effects and raw emotion. It acknowledged that the party was ending, but the brotherhood remained. For the surfers of 1978, Big Wednesday was a mirror. It showed them that their lifestyle had a history, a gravity, and a price. The legacy, from Point Break to the digital age. As we crossed the threshold into the 80s and 90s, the 70s myth was distilled into pure adrenaline. Films like Point Break took the soul surfing philosophy of the 70s, the mysticism of Bodhi, the rejection of the system, and wrapped it in a high-octane heist movie. It was surfing as religion taken to the extreme. Even though it was a Hollywood blockbuster, it carried the DNA of the 70s. The obsession with the 50-year storm, the tribalism, and the idea that a life lived without risk isn't a life lived at all. Today, we live in a world of 4K drone shots and instant Instagram clips. We see more surfing in a day than a kid in 1972 saw in a lifetime. But something is missing. The salted retina of the 70s had to wait. They had to travel. They had to develop film in darkrooms and wait weeks to see if they'd captured the magic. The epilogue, The Sound of the Swell. The 1970s was the decade where surfing grew up. It got a job, it got a wardrobe, it got a soundtrack, and it got its own mythology. We've traveled from the silent, amber-tinted glide of the longboard, through the reverb-drenched garages of the musicians, into the sewing rooms of the first brands, and along the dusty highways in a VW Combat. The sound of the swell isn't just the noise of water hitting sand. It's the echo of a decade that refused to conform. It's the feeling of a cold UGG boot on a wet foot, the smell of a corduroy shirt, and the sight of a perfect sunset captured on grainy 16 film. The swell never truly ends. It just changes shape. And as long as there is a horizon, there will be someone standing on the shore, watching, waiting, and listening for the next one.